So Disney has just shared with us their most ambitious plans for possible expansions to both Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom at Walt Disney World. But there is one big caveat to all of this, and that is that it won't be happening for quite some time. But nevertheless, let's still dive in and discuss everything that we know so far up next. This video is sponsored by Disney Collect by Topps, and by acquiring new collectibles in the arcade, completing daily missions, and crafting cards into rare sets, you can build a collection to then trade with Disney fans around the world. So download the free app for iOS and Android today with the link in the description box below. Hi there Waltoneers, I'm Jack and this is DSNY Newscast, and having just watched the Disney Parks presentation at D23 EXPO today, I've got to be honest with all of you, as I was actually going to come on here and express my level of disappointment and somewhat annoyance at the level of the announcements that we received today after 3 years of not having a D23 EXPO. And that overall feeling of being underwhelmed throughout the event is because there were plenty of announcements, but they were on the smaller side of things, which I will be getting into in more depth in its own video. But for most of the event, there wasn't any big news for Walt Disney World, or at least that was the case up until around 10 minutes before the end of the presentation, when Disney Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro invited up Jennifer Lee from Walt Disney Animation Studios and Chris Beatty from Walt Disney Imagineering to discuss some of the ambitious blue sky ideas that Imagineering is playing around with for Walt Disney World. Now what's critical here is to understand the term blue sky, as it's used by Disney and Imagineering when an idea is in the very early conceptual exploration phase, which basically means that nothing is set in stone, as Imagineers are encouraged to dream big like the sky is the limit for their creativity and possibilities. And so it's with that in mind, let's discuss this blue sky concept art. And first of all, let's begin with the Magic Kingdom, as this piece of artwork that was shown on stage depicts a possible expansion opportunity to the west side of the Magic Kingdom, where Imagineering is in the very early planning phase of possibly bringing the worlds of Coco and Encanto to the park, and they are also discussing the possibility of bringing the long-rumoured villains-inspired land as well. Now we saw artwork of this same style for Star Wars Land when it was initially announced in 2015, and that's because the artwork is purposely not very detailed, as the plans have not been finalised or confirmed, and instead it is just meant to give an illustrative impression of what a layout for a possible expansion like this could be. But one thing is very telling from the artwork, and that is the location. As Imagineer Chris Beatty stated, it being beyond Frontierland and the spires of Big Thunder Mountain, which we can see in the artwork. Now, I know that Disney has cut, scaled back and cancelled many projects in the past, and so understandably as a community we've had this feeling of being burnt by big Disney announcements that have not come to fruition, and so let's treat this with some cautious optimism. But I will say that I do think that Disney do have strong intentions to expand Magic Kingdom, as I reported on last November about the Magic Kingdom North World Drive project, which is basically reinforcing the infrastructure of the road system to the backstage on that side of a park. And so that brings us to the question of how could such an expansion like this plausibly work? As I reckon what Imagineering is thinking of doing here is something very similar to what we saw with the shortening of the Rivers of America at Disneyland for the creation of Galaxy's Edge. And so at Walt Disney World, there might be plans to drain and then restructure the Liberty Bell riverboat route, which would then make it possible to reclaim this section of land, which would be approximately around 10 acres in size. And then the other side of the railroad would also be accessible, which is another 7-acre parcel of land. However, this would pose a logistical problem with the riverboat's access to the backstage dock for maintenance, so perhaps there would be a waterway through this new expansion. But in addition to that, it seems as if this Villains Realm or Dark Kingdom idea would maybe be on the other side of the railroad tracks, technically outside of the Magic Kingdom berm, which will then work from a story perspective as the villains wouldn't be allowed within the Magic Kingdom. Although likewise it would equally work that the villains area would back up against the back of New Fantasyland, located behind the Haunted Mansion. And then in terms of the Coco and Encanto sections, it was teased that we would be able to visit the Land of the Dead and fly on the back of an Alebrije, which to me sounds a lot like a Flight of Passage style of ride system. And then it was also mentioned that an Imagineering would like to give us the opportunity to step inside the Madrigal's casita from Encanto and look behind the various doors, which could maybe be interpreted as a walkthrough attraction, but I think most likely it would be a trackless ride instead. But then moving on over to Animal Kingdom, as it's been the worst kept secret that Dino Land USA has been discussed for a replacement for quite a while. Having seen the demolition and the removal of Primeval World, the 2-acre plot of land where Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama is located is now on its last legs, and so Disney showcased this piece of blue sky concept art. And although blue sky artwork like this is not set in stone, it can allude to the approximate boundaries of where Imagineering want to work within, using the remnants of the existing land that is left within the artwork. As there is this building here, which is either the Dinosaur Treasures gift shop or its Restaurantosaurus, which then leaves us with two very different possibilities, with the first being that the Moana-inspired land would be where the Boneyard and Dino-Rama currently is, and then the city of Zootopia would be shown off in the distance, expanded outside of the current footprint of Animal Kingdom, with an attraction show building located where the cast member break rooms are. Or secondly, and what I think is most likely considering Disney's current strategy of retheming existing attractions instead of adding capacity, that what we might be looking at is Zootopia replacing Dinosaur and that corner of the park. As after all, the ride vehicle could easily be adapted to a ZPD car, and with the implementation of the same animatronics from Shanghai, it could be a relatively easy retheme to carry out, whilst also circumventing the Shanghai exclusivity clause, as it would not be the same exact attraction, as it would have a different ride system from what is expected to be a trackless ride over in Shanghai. And this would also mean that Disney could then restructure the expense for this project in terms of tax purposes, as it would be a renovation of an existing show building instead, much like they did with Cosmic Rewind. But then we come to the Moana section, and it seems as if the spinner ride that's been pictured is likely meant to be a retheming of Triceratops Spin to a Kakamora Coconut Pirates ride, in the same way that Flix Flyers was repurposed to become Emotional Whirlwind on Pixar Pier in 2019. But then we have the most interesting part of this blue sky artwork in my opinion, which is this area here, which looks to be a log flume or maybe a boat ride attraction themed to Moana. And what's curious about this is the orientation of where a show building housing this kind of attraction would be located, as it certainly seems that it will be in the same location where the Finding Nemo Theatre currently is. So, if Disney do follow through with this expansion plan, then realistically the only brand new attraction that would add additional capacity to Animal Kingdom could be a Moana themed boat ride, which personally I would love to see. But having said all of that, let's be realistic here, as with these projects only just now being in the early conceptual phase within Imagineering, it means that it's likely going to be years before they are made into a reality, and it's probably even going to be another year or maybe two before the final plans are announced and construction can begin. Although, I do think that judging by the fact that the blue sky artwork for Animal Kingdom was more detailed and there is already an open space ready for construction, it may hint that Imagineering have been working on the Animal Kingdom plans for longer than that of Magic Kingdom. And so it's more likely that we'll see progress begin on the Animal Kingdom expansion before that of the Magic Kingdom plan, as that will require a lot more logistical configuration before construction could even begin. And then lastly, we come to the reason of why were Disney so incredibly vague and non-committal to any of these plans. And I think it's probably because Disney CEO Bob Chapek would like a wait-and-see approach with what the economic forecast is going to be for the United States by the end of the year and into next year before moving forward. Which does sound like sound economics, but I think it's actually a riskier move in terms of business and competitiveness in the long run, especially with Universal's Epic Universe progressing so incredibly quickly down the road, which could leave Disney playing catch up for most of the rest of the decade. But now, it's over to you, Walt, and as I would like to know, what are your thoughts and opinions about these possible expansions that Disney discussed today at D23 EXPO, and what chances do you think of any of this coming to reality in the next couple of years, and if it doesn't, then what would you rather see come in its place to either Magic Kingdom or Animal Kingdom? And if you're enjoying this coverage, then give this video a massive thumbs up, as it really does help this channel out, and I'll be back with more videos to discuss everything coming out of D23 EXPO later on this week. And with all of that being said for today, I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.